Okay, you guys, welcome back to another episode of KarWell Chronicles. If you are watching this episode, you are figuring out very, very quickly that I am solo today. Well, not solo. It's you, me, and who you guys don't see, Paul, behind the computers over here, who makes all the magic happen. But we are just hanging out today. To let you know why Sarah's not here, she, as she does, booked a very last minute trip literally on her flight to Zion for the retreat. She booked a trip for her birthday, which is on Sunday. And her and Ethan are now in Iceland for the second time. For those of you that didn't watch before, she went to Iceland last year. Can't even really remember what time of year she went, but they did like this hike, and they figured out that there is flights, like direct flights to Iceland for super, super cheap. And so she decided to book a last minute trip to Iceland for her birthday. And so that's where she is now. She's staying in the coolest Airbnb tonight. And I think they're like Airbnb hopping for the weekend. And so she's celebrating her 31st birthday. So when Sarah listens to this back, happy birthday, Sarah, although she probably won't listen to it. So yeah, that's why Sarah's not here. So you guys get to hear me. We're going to see if I can talk for 45 minutes straight as we normally do. But I'm actually really excited about this episode because it forces me to get out of my comfort zone and talk a little more. I use Sarah as kind of a crutch for when there is dead space in a conversation. I know that she is going to pick that conversation right up. She always has something to say. She knows how nervous I get, and so she's just ready with things to talk about the second that I stop talking. And so I use that as a crutch a lot in day-to-day life, just like in normal social situations, but also podcasting, interviews, anything that we have to do. I'm always like, oh my gosh, at least Sarah's going to be there. So like if I stop talking during a presentation, she'll pick it up. So I'm a little forced to get over that today. But I'm going to spend the bulk of today's episode kind of recapping the retreat for you guys, for those of you that weren't there, because I plan these things 100%. And so I'm going to like go through kind of what our planning process was, why we chose the location that we did, and like how it turned out based on our expectations. All right, let's take a break from the episode to shout out one of our sponsors, Minoan. Are you running a short-term rental? You know how important it is to create a space that's both stunning and functional. That's why we love Minoan. Minoan makes it easy to furnish and restock your rental with high-quality, stylish pieces from premium brands at up to 60% off. Plus, their centralized ordering lets you check out across multiple brands in one seamless cart. No stress, no hassle. Excuse me, only having one place to look for my receipts when my bookkeeper inevitably asks for them? Thank you, Minoan. Then turn guest praise into profit with a digital showroom where you can showcase your design expertise and allow your guests to shop their stay. And the best part, Minoan is free to use, so you can elevate your space without breaking the bank. We use Minoan ourselves, and trust us, it's a game changer. All right, let's get back to the episode. And I do have notes here. I'm like a firm believer in getting aesthetic notebooks because you'll use them more often. And these were what we actually gift to everybody at the retreat. They are Wild House Papers open journals. If you're watching this, you can look at this right now, and it's just the most beautiful journal ever. But if you're not watching and you're listening, go check out Wild House Paper because they have stunning journals, and it just makes you want to write in them. So I'm trying to get into the habit of writing things down intentionally and taking notes. And so I put all of my notes for today's episode in here. I like broke open the journal for the first time since the retreat, and I use this one. So we're going to go over just a little retreat recap and talk through why we chose AutoCamp specifically. This one is mostly because of the audience that we have. One, it's a little selfish because obviously like AutoCamp is in really, really cool locations all over the country. I think they have like maybe 8 or 10 locations now, and they're all near something cool. Like a national park is one of like their main things that they try to be near, because after one of our speakers came, it was actually the GM of AutoCamp Zion, and he said that their mission is to connect people with nature. And so they're near national parks so that people can go on hikes. They really encourage you based off of this setup and where they're located to kind of get into the community and check things out. And so selfishly, we chose it for that. But if you went to our first retreat in October in Ohio, we went around the room during one of our sessions and we asked everybody to tell us like their goals, like why are they wanting to become an entrepreneur? What are their dreams in life? What does their ideal day look like? And I would say like 99% of people said that traveling and being outdoors were like their top two priorities outside of like taking their family with them to do those things. And so we were like, okay, how do we encourage that more? How do we make sure that our brand is kind of pushing people to do the things that they're wanting to do? It kind of like forces them to make that choice to do those things and like prioritize their goals. And Sarah had gone to AutoCamp previously, and her and Ethan had stayed there. And so we chose the location that she had been to as the first one, just because we were going to be a little more familiar with it and how everything operated. So we chose AutoCamp Zion, and I got in touch with their event planner there. Her name is Lindy. I'm going to shout her out because she was incredible to work with. I have planned every single one of these graduations. And so I've planned, let me see here, Chicago, Fort Worth, Traverse City, Ohio, Zion. So I've planned 5 of these events at this point, and they are hard. There is so many details to put into these. We have between 30 and 60 people, depending on how many people were in the mentorship at that point in time, how many tickets we sell to the retreats. The kind of format of the number of people has changed over time. But coordinating events and food and accommodation for that many people is so complicated. I call it basically planning a wedding, and I get to plan a wedding twice a year now. I got a little practice in that because I did 100% plan my wedding by myself. I didn't choose a location that had any vendors, and so it was like I was prepping myself for doing this full time. But having somebody at an AutoCamp location to communicate with made it a million times easier. And they gave us like a list of vendors that they had previously worked with that they really loved. And one vendor specifically that Lindy gave me was the caterer. And I think that if you ask any single person who went to our retreat, they will tell you that the food was one of the best parts. This caterer just went above and beyond. And you guys probably saw on our social media the grazing table from our welcome party. And it was not only stunning, but it tasted incredible. The food was just so good and there were so many options. So I'll shout out Lindy for just being incredible. But we got in touch with her and started planning the retreat literally back in January, I think. So I genuinely spent like 5 months planning this event. And so when I'm planning them, I'm trying intentionally to make sure that there is time for networking, that we're making sure that there are activities that are around your mindset or your health or getting outdoors and just having natural conversation with people during those events, but also just like leaning into yourself and making sure you're prioritizing the goals that you have, because we want them to be educational, but I think that it's really, really important to prioritize the connection that happens at these retreats. We say the same thing about our mentorship program specifically, is that you get a lot of information in it and you can take that information and do what you will with it. But the people that you meet are truly going to be the thing that changes your life and change the trajectory of your business completely. That's my personal opinion. And I think we've seen enough quote unquote case studies from our events and our mentorship at this point that it's proven to be true. And so when I'm planning these events, I really am trying to make sure that we set aside intentional time for just sit down networking, but then also the events that are going on that we're all doing together. I want them to feel like you can converse during them as well, and also have a little bit of just relaxing time. And so we did our welcome party, and that really is just to kind of loosen people up for the weekend. We typically will have like a beer and wine bar at that and some light bites, but it's just about everybody getting to meet each other for the first time. We personally get to see everybody in person, whether it's for the first time or people that we get to see like new faces. This event specifically, I was so excited because I love all of the people that are in our community, and we had so many people that went to our first retreat or that are a part of our mentorship program come to this event. And so a lot of them I've met in person before, but there were so many new faces that I had never met in person before, whether they're in our mentorship or just people who decided to come. And so it was really exciting to kind of like have new conversations with people. And one conversation specifically that I had with this couple, Tom and Katie, was about how like watching people at the beginning of their journey just like re-excites you because you're 10 steps ahead and you're kind of jaded and you've had all these problems and whatever else is going on in your business at that point in time, you kind of forget how excited you can be at the beginning. And so that's a really exciting part about the welcome party is you get to like watch people come in and be nervous, but also excited to experience something new. And so we have our welcome party and everybody kind of gets to hang out. And it's only a couple hours. We typically do that for 2 hours just to kind of like loosen people up. And then they get to go back and kind of relax. And then we have 2 relatively jam-packed days. Although I do try to set aside the time for networking, they're very packed days and we try to start pretty early. So for this event specifically, the wellness or outdoor activities were yoga on day 1. And so we had somebody local come in and it was really cool because she ended up following us or like looking us up on social media after we booked her. And she was like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to get into Airbnb. It's like so cool that I found you guys and you guys are doing this event. So I was like watching all of your videos. And so we ended up connecting with somebody that maybe we hadn't planned on. But we get to do yoga in the morning. And I, of course, being the planner, I never really participate in like the events that are happening because I'm coordinating on the back end and I'm taking content and all kinds of stuff. And I got to like take videos, but as people were walking away, we had our second session of yoga starting and a couple of people walked over to me and they're like, I think I started crying during that yoga session. And I was like, wait, what? Why are you crying? And they were like, it was so spiritual and so relaxing and I just needed it. And one person specifically who really needed it, who kind of called out that like the relaxation really helped her was Kate Henry. So I'm going to shout you out because Kate is in the trenches of putting together a property right now. And she has been. She came to our October retreat and she left it, went and bought a property and has been working on this property nonstop. She is away from her child. She is away from her husband. And they're making it work, but she is literally like sleeping on blankets on the floor, maybe on a mattress now because she has some of the furniture together. But she has been working so hard. And so she went and did yoga and she was just laying there. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this was so needed for her. And she needed that break. And like, she didn't want to like completely pull herself out of it, right? She even mentioned, she was like, it was hard coming here, but I needed like motivation to keep going. And so coming to an event where other people are still talking about the same things, they're interested in what she's doing, but she doesn't have to physically be in the property and like bogged down by it every day, I think was just really rejuvenating for her. But yoga in the morning was definitely needed for her. She just got to lay there and relax and not think about anything. And so we did yoga in the morning and then we had some workshops, which was a new addition to this retreat versus any of the previous ones that we've done. We got some feedback from the last one that people wanted maybe a little bit more one-on-one attention or like diving deeper into like specific case scenarios, things like that, not just overarching topics. And so we implemented workshops this time. And so we had Federico and then Maddie and Skylar, who you guys are pretty well aware of at this point. They are definitely regulars on our social media content as far as like helping people, and they plug into our community so much and are so helpful. And so they helped us do some workshops. And on day 1, they did project management with Maddie and Skylar. So if you guys are watching them on social media, they have project managed. I genuinely couldn't even tell you how many projects they've done at this point, but they're doing a lot of historical projects in New York now, which comes with a lot more project management because there's so much more renovation that happens when you're working with a home that's as old as the ones that they are. So they're really the experts at it. And so we got to have so many people sit down and ask them questions about project management. And then Federico, who is the resident expert on revenue management, he was able to walk through revenue management with half of our group as well. And if you don't know, Federico used to work for American Airlines on their pricing. So he truly understands numbers and the concept of selling something that can never be sold again. So he'll describe it as once that flight takes off or once that night is gone for your property, you never have the opportunity to sell that again. It's gone. And so understanding revenue management is that much more important in this type of industry because you don't get the second chance to sell it. And so he really dove deep into that with the community there. And so I just think that the first half of the day was like jam-packed with education because of that, but also we like try to have slower starts to the day, understanding that the second half is going to be pretty long. And so I also, knowing that Fede and Maddie and Skylar would talk a lot, I pack in like a 3-hour lunch break to these retreats. And I will tell you, I think maybe we ended up getting an hour each day for lunch because of things running long and things needing to start early and people running in and out. And so I'm really glad that I did that at this point. And I will continue to make sure that I pack that time in moving forward. But that was really beneficial time, I think, for everybody. If you've gone to one of our events before, or really any event that has a lot of networking involved, sometimes those little breaks, you genuinely just need to go off and be by yourself. I had so many people be like, I love this. This is so amazing, but talking so much is just so draining. And I was like, go back to your Airstream and like turn on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. That was like a big topic of conversation. Everybody was watching that in their Airstream, but I was like, go back, turn that on, take a little break for yourself, and then come back. And that was another really important thing about us choosing to film or choosing to go have the retreat at AutoCamp, because everybody kind of got their own space. We loved having our first retreat at Rose's Airbnbs in Ohio, and I think that it was a really cool experience. Coordinating the accommodation for everybody was just a nightmare there, only because people didn't know each other, were sharing rooms. Some people were sharing beds, which props to you guys for sharing beds with people that you don't know. But hold on, I'm going to take a drink, guys. We were intentional with wanting everybody to kind of have their own accommodation to be able to do that and kind of go back and take some time and then come back to the group. And we definitely had people that took advantage of that, which is really, really nice. And then the second half of the day was all educational sessions, and we had such cool speakers this time around. The first speaker that we had was Summer-Led Design, and so they talked about being the top 1% Airbnb in your market. And they are so plugged in and intentional about the way that they work with their clients. And I knew that they cared about design. I knew that they cared about their clients. I knew they did market research. I knew all of this stuff about them. But hearing them stand up there and talk about it, and every time they would make a point, I'd be like, oh my gosh, they really get it. Like, these are all the things that we're constantly talking about, but it's not always the easiest to relay that information if you're not the person designing for that many clients all over the country. We used to do that, right? But we just haven't done it in so long that we can speak to the Michigan market so well. But having them pull up examples of properties all over the place and be able to talk about their process, I think was super beneficial for everybody. But it also just like was like a light bulb moment for me, being like, okay, we are doing this right. They're saying all the same things that like we're thinking. And so it really felt like the perfect partnership as far as somebody to come and speak on design. And then we had Steven, or otherwise known as the Snapback CPA, if you know him online, and he did a very true Steven presentation. He does not pull up slides. He's one of the best people that you can talk to about taxes and tax strategy, because like what a boring topic. But he just basically tells you like, ask questions. I'm going to talk you guys through this. I'm going to help you break it down and understand it better. And he makes taxes not so scary or like doom and gloom. And he's able to like really plug into like, okay, this is your situation and this is how I would handle this. And what, looking towards the future, what changes could potentially happen. And he's very plugged into like even legislation changes and how that could affect our businesses and things like that. And so he genuinely just stood up there and he was like, all right, let's start talking taxes, start asking me questions. That was his whole presentation. And he took up his entire time because who doesn't have questions on taxes? I'm like, literally one of my biggest fears in the world is like not doing my taxes correctly by accident and then getting arrested. And I'm fully convinced that the first time I get caught from not doing my taxes right, that they're going to arrest me. I don't think that's how it works. And Steven will probably tell me that I'm crazy if he ever hears this episode and be like, Emily, it's fine. Like, we have everything documented. And if I like made a mistake in the stuff that I sent to him, he's like, you just make it right. But I'm genuinely, that's like one of my biggest fears is getting arrested for tax fraud for whatever reason. I don't know why. But he does help me, like, he does relieve a lot of that anxiety because he understands it so well in a way that, like, I've never had a CPA explain it to me before. So he spoke, and then the last speaker of the day was a very cool experience for us because when we were designers, we worked with Wayfair Professional so much, like an outrageous amount. We were very close friends with our Wayfair Professional rep at that point in time, who no longer works for the company, but we partnered with Wayfair Professional to speak. She spoke on branding. Her name is Amanda Evans, and she came and spoke on branding, and she just has been in branding forever. So like outside of being a part of Wayfair Professional, I think that she just understands branding very, very well. And she was able to speak to our audience about that. But on top of that, they also hosted our group dinner. So we like to host what we call like family style dinners. Technically, it's not family style in the way that like the food is passed through the table, but we want everybody sitting at long tables. We want you to be encouraged to network with each other. And so they hosted what they called the Purple Perspective Dinner. And it was so cool. They like went all out with everything purple, and there was a purple cocktail and or mocktail if you're not drinking. And it was just really cool to watch like the branding conversation and then see the brand that she was there represented so well at dinner. And so that was really cool. Like everybody got to come in and everybody's phones come out and they're all filming everything, like the tablescapes and the cocktails and everything like that. And so it was just a really cool experience watching all of that. And then being able to kind of wind down with sitting around a fire. And one of our sponsors also gave s'mores kits. And so people got to like pull out their s'mores and make s'mores and stuff like that. And so it was just really cool watching that part of the event all come together and like watch the schedule really happen and see people kind of talking to each other and networking. And then day 2 was very similar schedule. So we started the day hiking. That was an incredible experience to be able to hike in Zion National Park. Like I said, one of our main goals with the retreats being where they are is kind of like forcing people to check those things off their bucket list and be able to get outside and experience new things and all of these things that are on their goals list that they might not just do on their own. And so most of our group had not been into Zion National Park, and I personally had only been in driving. So we drove through the park on Sunday because we had a little bit of time before we needed to set up. And it was so cool to be able to hike and watch everybody stop and be taking photos. And I saw people hiking with like people that they literally didn't know before the retreat. And then they're there and they're like hiking an entire hike with them and talking the whole time. So we get to the top, we come back down, and then we get to come back. And of course, as things go, the schedule had to change because it was so hot, you guys, and we were just all drenched in sweat. And so I was like, you know what, we're going to take an hour break, and then we'll do workshops, and then we'll do lunch. And so we were able to make all of that work, but it was such a great start to the day. And we went early enough that it wasn't like crazy busy, but Zion National Park is insane. I could not even describe it to you, and I'm terrified of heights. So when we were driving through, I was literally closing my eyes. Tyler was driving the entire time on Sunday when we were driving through the park, and I literally closed my eyes for half of it because I am terrified of heights. And I wish I was the kind of person who could just like look up and appreciate it and get over the fear, and I'm just not. So I didn't really get to see what the park looked like until we went on the hike, because you have no choice but to like look at where you're going when you're on these hikes, or you're going to fall off the side of a mountain. And so I'm really glad that I did it. I'm really glad that I went all the way to the top of the hike. And I think a lot of the group kind of felt the same way, but it was really cool. And so to see everybody else get to experience it for the first time as well was awesome. And then we had our afternoon sessions. Again, we do like the 3 sessions in the afternoon, but this one was really cool because, as I mentioned before, the general manager of AutoCamp Zion was able to come and speak and tell us like about their operation and how things run there. And it was really eye-opening to understand like what their seasonality looks like, especially because they really rely on people coming to the national park to bring in so much of their occupancy. And so their winter seasons do significantly reduce their occupancy, and just like learning all of those little details, talking about the cost of Airstream specifically and how that plays into their profit margins but also understanding that the Airstream is part of their brand. And so they will continue to do Airstreams, and they really aren't trying to steer in another sort of glamping direction because it is so instilled in their brand that they do have Airstreams. And so being able to talk through those questions, because I don't know about you guys, but when I think about my long-term goal for investing in real estate, I know that there is like an entire side to it that's like just invest in buildings and go multifamily and go the place where you can like create generational wealth. And I really like that. But I think that so many of us are in this for the hospitality aspect and being able to create really cool experiences for people. And so being able to like see that in person and talk to somebody who runs it like that, it gives you a perspective on like, oh, I like that they did this, or I would have done this differently, or they are really catering to their target market. So maybe they're not putting as much money into interiors because they want people to go and enjoy the park and come back. And so there's like certain things that they're emphasizing more versus not, and understanding why they're making those decisions based on their brand and based off everything that they are trying to portray to their target avatar was really cool to be able to ask those questions. And then after we got to speak to Walker, Zoe Berghoff came on. And if you know Zoe Berghoff's story, it's insane how she has gotten to where she is. But also, like, if you've met her, you're really not that surprised that she's successful, because she just has like this drive in her to become everything that she's ever dreamed of. And she's like there, but she's continuing to go and like achieve more things. But she talked through land hacking and some of the deals that she has done. And I think she's broken down quite a few of these on her Instagram. So you probably could go and like follow her and be able to see what kind of like at least an overarching view about what she talked about at the retreat. But it's insane what she has been able to do with like just a few pieces of property that she's purchased and like staying in the market that she is. She doesn't expand too far outside of that market. She's able to like optimize her revenue on the I think she owns like 2 pieces of land there, and she's been able to optimize so much on it. And so just listening to her numbers and the like appreciation that she's gained, it was mind blowing to hear that. And I've heard like bits and pieces of this before because we've been friends for so long, but it was really crazy to be able to like watch her talk through that process. And every time she speaks, she's like more confident talking about it because she's seeing like the proof in the pudding every time she launches a new deal or every time she has something new happen. So that was really, really cool. And then Sarah and I had the last speech of the day. In true me and Sarah fashion, we put together this presentation and literally didn't practice it one single time. So we were just winging it, but we knew the topic itself was going to be really important to people. It was really important to us in like the stage that we're at right now. If you guys listened to our last episode, you know that we are stepping away from a huge portion of our business, and we've decided to set down the mentorship and the retreats after this fall retreat in Cape Cod. We're going to be putting those things down and kind of steering our focus in a different direction. And so as that goes, our audience is also like asking questions and wanting to know ways that they can like pivot or make more money in other areas or things like that. And so I think that we're becoming passionate. We're still passionate about short-term rentals and the way that it can change your life, and it can kind of get you out of your 9 to 5, or it can help you supplement some income that you're trying to supplement and things like that. But our presentation specifically was around how you're going to continue to grow that wealth after the fact, right? Like after you get out of your 9 to 5, what do you do that can speed up that process versus getting your first rental and then having to wait until that makes money or enough money to pay you back, and then you make enough to get into your next investment. That timeline can get longer and longer and longer all the time. And so our presentation specifically was on quote unquote selling the shovels. If you look into the gold rush at all, you understand the concept of selling the shovels. And so we're just basically talking about all these, the word tertiary that I'm looking for, I think it's tertiary businesses. Somebody please comment and tell me if I'm wrong on that word. But all of these businesses surrounding short-term rentals that you can plug into, because there's such a need as this industry grows. There's such a need for all of these businesses that support the people who do short-term rentals, and you don't have to front all the capital to actually buy the real estate, right? And so it was talking about like selling the shovels as the people did for the people who were mining for the short-term rental industry and being able to pivot and not necessarily be a quote unquote real estate investor, but being a real estate investor supporting business. That was really long. And so we were able to talk about that. And it was also another light bulb moment for so many people. But we also announced there that we were kind of setting things down. And I was shocked at how supportive people were. And I think I've been shocked about how supportive people have been since the episode came out. I'm going to turn my page here because I'm pretty sure I have a note on this. I do. I have not looked at my notes one time. You guys, I do this every time. I take all these notes and then I don't even look at them. But so, yeah, I've been shocked at like how supportive everybody has been. I think it's very, very scary to build up an entire business and feel like people see you in a specific way. People are relying on you for specific information. And then to basically be like, hey, we're going to quit it all and we're pivoting and we're doing this other thing. Although I'm very sure of our decision and I think that it's the right decision for both of us, I think that we're going to be significantly happier. The way that we're spending our time is going to be better. It's still a scary thing to do. And I think we drug it out even longer than we maybe should have because of that fear of disappointing people. But everybody has been incredibly supportive. And one of my favorite things about it is since we made this announcement, people in our community that have been in our community for a long time have been coming to us and talking, being like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to talk about this. I've been wanting to talk about different things. These are the things that like I'm interested in now too. We've switched our conversation in our mentorship program. Literally, I think for the past 3 weeks, it's been about using AI to like benefit your business or move your business forward in a faster way. And that can literally be done in any single business. It's not specific to short-term rentals. And so our community was growing out of our topic anyway, and we just didn't see it or it wasn't communicated or whatever else. But because we decided to vocalize that we wanted to make a change, that we were moving in a different direction, our community has now come back to us and been like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. And so I think that that just speaks to the power of like putting out what you want into the universe, and then the things that you want will come to you. And it was right here in our community anyways, the kind of conversation that we wanted to be having. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're not putting these things down. We are going to do that, but it just feels really good to know that like our community is going to be continuing on with us in that journey. Outside of short-term rentals, like there are so many things that we are interested in now, and I feel like the world is our oyster. And so hopefully, well, Sarah will continue to have shiny red ball syndrome. That's just who she is as a person, and I think it's one of the best things about her. But also, luckily, she has people around to kind of like rein her in. But I have very, very much targeted starting a coffee shop. We talked about this on the last episode, but I've like even dove into it more since we recorded the last episode. And I truly think that I want to not only start a coffee shop in my hometown, but just continue to build the businesses and the community there and make it a destination for people that are traveling north in Michigan versus some of the cities that are around our town. I think that there's such a need in my community for tourism or money to come in to build up the community itself due to a lot of issues that are going on, but it's a small town and there isn't a lot of income coming in. There are a few other businesses and business owners that try to do this there, but I just think that there's such a need for it. And so I'm really excited to be able to kind of like set things down and have more time to dedicate towards that. And yeah, so it was just really cool to see us leaving this week feeling a little nervous because we had already announced on the podcast, it wasn't released yet, but we had announced on the podcast that we were going to set it down. We had announced to our mentorship that we were going to set it down, but we hadn't like made an announcement in front of sponsors or any other people that this was going to happen, and to have such support come back to us. And then on the last day of the retreat, when everybody was leaving, the podcast episode launched, and we again got a ton of support from people on being able to set that down. So thank you guys so much for being supportive of that and understanding and excited for us and being willing to like continue on a journey as we pivot yet again. We started as so many different things at this point and we've pivoted so many different times, but it's been really cool to see that our community has kind of like moved with us in that. But yeah, so that was basically the recap of the retreat. There's so many details and conversations and things that I probably missed. And honestly, the people that have been there, that were there and that came up to me and said thank you for planning it and that they want to come to the next one and that it really was life-changing for them. It makes every single second of planning worth it when I get to see people saying that like a conversation that they had or a speaking session that they heard truly changed the way that they view their business or changed their goals or made them understand things at a different level. It makes every single second worth it and makes me so proud of the events that we've been able to throw and also the community that we've built and that the sponsors that we choose and the people that we choose to do workshops and the people that are in our community really do pour into people when they come to our events. It's just really cool to see that happen all together. But I think that is it. I think I've rambled and I don't know how much time this episode is. So I'm so sorry if it's a short episode, but I hope you guys liked it. I don't know how many solo episodes you're going to get from me, if I'm being completely honest, but Sarah will likely maybe be back on the next one. Guys, I don't know what her travel schedule is. I think she's gone for a little bit and then comes back. If you know us, you know that that's pretty standard. I get that question on a regular basis. Where's Sarah? I genuinely don't know. I'll have to check her location and get back to you. But thank you guys for listening to this. I hope you guys liked listening to my voice for however long with no input from Sarah. You got one episode of not having to hear her voice, so you're all welcome. I know she won't listen to this, so she's not going to hear that little dig. But yeah, so thank you guys for listening, and rate and review us if you haven't before, and follow along with the podcast wherever you're listening. Follow us, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.